Welcome to the show, Teddy. This is the soup show, and we are happy to have you, Mr. Seedballs. I'll call you Seedballs, Mister. So welcome to the show. I don't know where we should start from. So far, so good. We're having Seedballs here. We have a mic looks like a seedball. What are you currently working on?
Cool, thanks, Don. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the soup. I like it. Okay. My name's Deputy Kinyanjui. I'm from Seedballs Kenya and Cookswell Jikos. Okay. Cookswell Jikos is our parent company. And that started off with my dad back in the early 1980s. Okay. So guys might remember, you know the small jiko you see with the clay liner? Yeah. They used to not be there. It used to only be mabati jikos. Okay. The problem with the metal one, a lot of the heat gets wasted off to the side. Okay. So my dad at the time was a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, and he'd been really interested in doing stoves and doing jikos, helping people cook a little bit better. He grew up in a very small village up in Kiambu in Githunguri. Okay. And he was telling me as a kid, he always remembers just how hard it was for his mom to cook. There was wet wood, it'd be raining, collecting the firewood. So he had this passion about fiddling around with jikos, which he said even his friends would sort of laugh at him. They're like, Professor, you're a professor of urban planning. Jiko, ya jua kali, ya kupikia. And they'd sort of almost say like, this is not a serious thing, But he had that passion about it and saw the need definitely within. Okay. So he designed what's known as a Kenya ceramic jiko. So that jiko you see with the clay liner was actually invented here in Kenya. Okay. And it's great because you think about inventions from Kenya, it's like M-Pesa usually or whatever. But also that original small jiko that I'm sure you have, I'm sure your mom has, these guys have. Yeah. So many people have one of those small jikos. Yeah. And there's a whole history behind how they went to Thailand to see how they were making these ceramic stoves. But the way they cook there, doing stir fry, is not very stable. So if you're doing ugali, the jiko will tip over. So when he learned about putting the ceramic, they brought the stove back and then started doing trials with people, which we still do. And come up with a new type of stove. Yeah. I'll give it to you for a weekend, use it, cook with it, and then come back and tell me, what do you think? It was too tall, it was too short, whatever. So keeping that user-designed feedback to come up with a product that's just right for you, the user, was something that he kind of pioneered back in the 80s when people were thinking about everything should be made in one factory instead of decentralized production of teaching 100 juakali fundis how to make improved stoves. So he took more on that line, which has now evolved into what's now Cookswell Jikos and Seedballs, which was us thinking about if the jikos use charcoal, and charcoal comes from trees, how do you grow more trees? And that's what led us to the Seedball program.
You say your dad is the one who invented the jiko, the original jiko. How big was he when you guys were growing up? How big was he in terms of insisting? Best inventions come from STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering, maths. How big was he on me advising you guys take up STEM subjects, take up STEM courses? Was he big on it, or he just let you?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I mean, that sort of generation, I think the way the schools were set up and the way the schools were designed, they didn't really have so much STEM per se at the time. Let's wait for this one. So imagine, that could be dropping seeds. If we could get each of those guys, because it's probably empty even, going with no one in it. So not like to fault the schools per se, but they didn't quite have that push towards, like, I sort of remember learning, more traditional things, like, English history. I went to a school based on English curriculum. Okay. So I learned about the wives of a king in another country from 500 years ago, which even today I wonder how much that's actually helped me. But lucky for me, my dad was very hands-on. So definitely one of my younger memories was with testing all of the jikos would be like sneaking out my mom's sufurias. Because if you have a bad jiko and it smokes, then the sufuria will get really chafu and very dirty. So I remember many afternoons sitting with like many thermometers and, playing with clay, making different shapes, doing different types of fires, which I don't know if I was always drawn to playing with fire or if it was because of working with him. But as a kid, it was really fun doing all of that hands-on sort of science outside of school, just with my dad and following him and, boiling the water, tasting the sweet potato when it was finally cooked. Yeah. So those sort of hands-on engagements, I think, were probably a bit more lasting with me than some of the stuff I learned in school. Okay.
Now let's talk maybe numbers. For how many years has Seedballs been operating in Kenya? Have you gone to Tanzania, other places? For how many years so far since you started?
So Seedballs we started in late 2016 was when we made the first ones.
Okay.
And then we've been able to, our focus has really been in Kenya and in our own backyard. And there's this feeling of if you haven't cleaned up your own backyard, how can you go to the neighbor to tell them what to do?
Yeah.
But we have done a few sales to Uganda, to Somalia, someone who's doing them with drones up there, and some to Tanzania. You do need to get a lot more paperwork to transport seeds across the border. It's one of those unusual things. If you think about on the border of Namanga and Lotoktok, those sort of areas, that line is a very imaginary political line. The acacia tree that grows 100 meters here and 100 meters there, those, ecologically speaking, they have no idea Hukone Kenya, Hukone Tanzania. For them, that's one ecoregion. So it's an interesting thing that even while we share trans-boundary issues, the water, the rivers that come from Kilimanjaro come to Amboseli. But if you're planting from Kenya in Tanzania, there's a whole complicated layer of paperwork that's now suddenly costing 10,000 shillings. And it is one of those idiosyncrasies you have where the tree doesn't know borders, but we know borders. And then that leads to more bureaucracy, which can be a challenge.
Oh, okay. So 2016 up to now, it's roughly around...
7 years, 6 years.
Around 7, 8 years. How was COVID for you guys?
COVID was interesting. A lot of people, I think, for the first time maybe in a lot of people's lives, actually took a moment to slow down and start looking up and seeing there are actually many birds that live where what type of birds are there? People, I think, making that connection with a lot of the environmental destruction leading to our problems. We're looking at how do we make a change and what can we do, like growing trees. And then we did have a lot of people interested in getting seed balls because they went home. Some people went up country, they'd stay with their grandparents or whatever. And while they were at home, if they wanted to start planting trees with the movement restrictions, they were unable to get seedlings from the town or whatever it is. So that was great because you can send like a bag of these ones is 2,500 seeds. Suddenly you can receive that overnight at your doorstep at home and you're able to start planting back, on the farm or whatever it was. So COVID was interesting. I mean, it was very challenging with all the problems around it and, especially at the beginning, the unknown, everything. It was just there's so much chaos happening. But I think overall, in a way, it did bring more people a bit closer to nature than they had been previously. Now that it's been 2 or 3 years, I wonder if that connection has stayed with as many of the people. For some, it's probably stayed and even grown even more. They're hiking every weekend, and they never used to even think that they'd go hiking on a weekend. And in a way, it was COVID that did that to certain people, And then for others, life's still tough, and they don't even want to talk about it.
You see, seed balls, they're very small, and it's hard to count them in numbers, especially this bag, to count them like, I have 10,000 seed balls in here. But somehow you seem to have sort of like a set of data you have, in Kajiado we've done like this amount of seed balls. For me, it's amazing. What's your thinking behind it? Because do you keep the records? How do you find them all that? You have actually, I pick up a place, you love the information. So how do you find them? How's your mindset when you start working, rolling out things? How do you work around them?
Well, I think luckily for me, my partner Nadia, she's doing a PhD in lion genetics, so she has a very strong science background. And she's really imprinted on me also, how do you conserve what you can't measure or what you don't know? And so with us starting the Seedballs company, even with our co-founder Elson, he did his master's was on hippo ecology in the Mara and how much grass the hippos eat. And so he also had an outdoor science sort of background. And so for us knowing, how many seed balls are being distributed, where are they going, what's happening, there's so much to learn back from people's experiences. Some people say I planted them in 100% shade and nothing grew. And so you start realizing, okay, you do need to have some light if it's a light-loving species of tree. So that feedback to improve the product, it's similar to the way we did with the Jikos. You really need to hear back from the end user, what was your experience with all of it? Did you actually need a bigger bag or a smaller bag? Or this was just big enough to carry? And, even this choice of the size of this box, that was back from a customer who said they need 6 of them to fit and in size this big or something. So the numbers have been interesting from these because you can't, doing exact on the seed balls is a bit tricky, but we know each kilo has between 450 and 480 seed balls. And we know how many kilos we've produced of every type. And then with the help of Sonny Holmes, who I know you've met and hung out with, he's been really good on helping us track everywhere they've gone. So when you, Don, go and plant trees in a school in eastern Kenya, for us, the important thing of knowing about that is in 10 or 20 years down the line, if I'm not here, you're not here, nobody, it's good for people to know that was a 1 shilling tree. And if they're looking at this big tree 20 years from now, to be able to now go back and then replicate and learn more from those is a very key part of the whole restoration science and business.
Wow. Just, you've been able to support us. We go to schools, especially for us, it's institution. So other than us, institution, the local institution, do you have any other partners you've worked with in terms of local level, CBOs, NGOs, and in which areas? For example, I know you in Makueni, you're there. I know in Kajiado, you're there. In Nairobi, you as well as there, Ngong, all those areas. Maybe give us a geographical scope of where currently you've managed to work, success rates of those areas, and such like.
Okay, yeah. So what's been amazing with the seed balls, because they're so small and portable, is when we did our last full record, I think there's someone who's planted seed balls in over 40 counties in Kenya. And that's really interesting knowing that, by the time, I can always remember once delivering seedlings to somewhere in Narok, and we took 1,000 seedlings, each one weighed half a kilo. And it was so heavy, it broke the Land Rover that I was in. The engine broke because of that extra weight. And I remember thinking, why am I taking soil from Nairobi to Narok? They have soil there, they only want the tree. And so the seed balls, that's been great, being able to have such a wide geographic scope and being able to then say, okay, in areas with high rainfall, then the success has been higher. Somewhere like Bomet, rains very often. Guys are planting them on a farm so that, there's no wildlife eating it or whatever. And those ones you get, 50, 60% success rate. Other places we've seen, near Magadi, northern Samburu, very harsh terrain, low rainfall. One of the more interesting things I've seen from those areas where the initial first year, second year success, you didn't see any of the trees coming up, but then you realize it hasn't rained properly. So of course the trees need rain for them to germinate, is finding seed balls that we'd taken from one of those batches and a 2.5-year-old acacia tortillus seed, we put in a nursery bed and it still germinated. And in the labs, they've been able to keep acacia seeds for more than 10 years. So it's a very interesting thing to look at. Our concept of time as humans is very limited compared to a tree. You think of a tree as planning to be there for 200 years. So, what's 1, 5, 10 years on the whole scope of its lifetime? If I'm lucky, maybe I'll be here 80. So now you're thinking it's been 1 year, where's the tree? So it's an interesting also thing of patience, of learning about how to look at time in a different scale when you're talking about forestry versus, tomatoes or sukuma or something.
Sustainability concept of it. It's something, so many conferences, so many meetings, so all these things, they are around sustainability. But for me, the first time I saw the seed ball and you explained it to me, I was amazed because I thought this is the future. We need to have seeds packaged in this design. Is it possible for all the seeds or it's possible for some seeds? And maybe why are not people taking it up based on your views?
Well, so for the type of seeds, A would be size, of course. You can't really do mango seeds, they're too big. But also, there are basically two types of seeds out there, orthodox and Ralcanton. Orthodox seed means it can keep without being in a refrigeration. And many of the fruit trees, especially, like if you take an orange tree seed or something, not only would you have to keep that seed at 2 degrees centigrade in a fridge or whatever, but also a lot of times those commercialized types of plants, they don't grow true to seed. So even if you grow the avocado seed, you're not going to get the same type of avocado that it came from. That's why people do grafting. Because when you graft it, you get the same as the mother plant transferred over. So that's probably about, I'd say half, maybe a bit more than half of the species of plants in Kenya. Certainly dryland plants have adapted to be dormant and be able to keep without, refrigeration. Because of course, if you're a piece of grass growing in the Magadi or something, never going to happen. So they're able to stay in dry, harsh conditions for many, many years. So within those types, there's a big possibility. I mean, we're talking hundreds and hundreds of different types of plants and trees and flowers and vines all over Kenya. Our focus, though, has really been through Cooksoil Jikos, knowing that we run a company that uses charcoal. The sustainability in the long term, we need to make sure there's new charcoal out there for 20, 30 years down the line. And also, of course, how do we replace all the trees that have been cut down for the last 100 years? And that's an interesting thing with the seed balls. That dust is actually the waste dust from where they sell charcoal in town. So over the years, about 10% when you unload the trucks, all of that waste that's left on the ground, before they didn't really have much they were doing with it. So then briquettes started up, and then we started doing the seed balls. We have had a few people copying us who always say, you know, it's a good thing, we're growing more trees. So if you're copying, fine. There's a group in, I think now, Nakuru, Eco Mazizi or something. They're with Nakuru sanitation. So somehow they're using poop from humans that they, I don't know what they do. It's a bit, I don't know if I'd want to really touch it if you know Ikumbeni Mafi, but they say it's clean, which is good. And then, a few other people. At the end of the day, I mean, it's one of those things that it's so natural, even without people copying us, there's still trees dropping seeds, you know, and there's still people planting trees in so many different ways. And, you know, it's something that we all need to be doing that's more that we're concerned of how are we looking at the species choice, so you're doing the right type of tree for the right reason in the right place, and thinking beyond trees. Because as we know, 70% of Kenya is not forest. It's actually grasslands, where the wildlife, the livestock. So getting people excited and interested in learning about grass and pasture and those savanna ecosystems as well is also a very key part of everything.
Oh, okay. So let's is it dissecting, eh? The soup show is an easy show. So acha niongee Kiswahili. Wase washai kuenjoy ati kizungu yako ni different na watu wengine. Do you get that often?
Yeah, sometimes. Yes, I do.
Do you think you're from the US? Do you have any background in the US?
Yes, I'm half American.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, kwa kipande ya mom in the States, but nimezaliwa hapa, nimeishi hapa, nakaa hapa.
Okay. So, favorite music from Kenya right now?
Favorite music from Kenya? Does it count if it's not from Kenya, if it's one of our neighbors?
Let's start from Kenya, then we'll go to the neighbors.
Okay, well, one of my favorite music and artists that I've always loved, and is also a friend of mine, is Maya Von Lecko. Do you know her? And it just popped up on my YouTube the other day, and I was driving. One of her songs, her dad, Sal Davis, is an old singer from like TZ. Check it out. It's called... that was the song I was just listening to, under those jellyfish. Oh, okay. I filmed in Watamu, and it's really dope. And they're all standing like in the water with their instruments. Okay. It's a great song. It's very, very skilled.
And outside Kenya?
Outside Kenya, recently I've been listening to a lot of Alpha Blondie. Okay. Always, not even recently. Always been listening. But some, you know, it comes and then it goes and then it comes. And then also that music from, you know, Chad and Mali, like Ali Farouk Toure. And those slow guitars and stuff, that's fascinating music. I found a lot of that recently.
You've mentored a lot of young people, and there are so many success stories around what you do. Personally, me, I'm inspired by you.
Thanks.
Yeah,
likewise.
So you coming from a field which many young people wataki kuingia kuventure. For us, we think art, music video. Also, the society has shaped us in a way you think you can always make it faster with music than in other spaces. So there's a big challenge of STEM and all those things. For you, was it a passion for you to go to STEM directly? Uliamua tu leo ni aje mimi, maisha yangu yote nitakuwa scientist, nitakuwa msiwa hizi vitu zote. Or growing up, did you do something else different? Like business school, all these things. And then somehow you found your passion along. Yeah.
To be honest, I was a very bad student. I was probably very much let my parents down, and my teachers, I'm sure, would even, you know, Mulimu ya math, they'd be shocked that I'm sitting there. They'd be like, what? And, you know, school is not for everyone. And different types of schools are for different types of people. The traditional method I went to, I feel like one of my strongest things that probably got me connected with being outdoors was, and is it probably like age 10 or 11, in music class. If you misbehave, the lady would make you go sit outside on the grass. And I used to love that. It would give me a reason to misbehave so I could go sit outside and watch the little bugs and stare at the birds. And I remember thinking when she told my mum that, my mum was just shocked. She was like, because she knew how much I loved being outdoors. So she was telling the teacher, that's not a punishment. You've given the guy the best thing he could ever ask for is to go outside and enjoy. And also had some learning disability challenges, like with dyslexia. It was very difficult to write.
Yeah.
I could read really well. Even today, I have a lot of trouble writing. At least, thank God, we can type. Reading, though, is great. And it was one of those things also in a way of, sometimes people think if you're reading, you're wasting time.
Yeah.
You see, and I think somehow, in a lot of Kenyan cultures, it's like, what are you doing? You're just sitting under a tree, reading a book. Una kazi? Una kitu kufanya? Versus, wow, they're actually doing something. Hiyo ndio kitu yenye unafanya. And so with my mom's, one of her backgrounds was being librarian. And my dad was always very different for his generation. I think he was a very brilliant person from the guys that he grew up with, who was really interested in being open-minded and thinking about things always in 5 different methods than the traditional way of everyone else looking at it. And that's, transferred through our whole family. And having that support through my sisters, mom, all my friends has been a really big one. That, to me, is worth, I didn't pay them, but it's worth more than all the school fees my parents paid for me, is the free support one can get from their friends and siblings and peers.
Okay. So there's a popular phrase, Karibu Kanairo, Karibu Kenya. It means, welcome to Kanairo, you don't know what you're entering in. So we decided in every episode we'll be shooting, we'll ask our guest if Kanairo has taught him something, especially, ushai pigwa kiboko ya... Have you ever been conned in Nairobi?
Oh, yes, yeah. I've had a lot of good and a lot the experiences.
Maybe your worst way you were conned, but you even laughed at yourself.
Oh, I can't even think. It's the thing is, I'm so optimistic. I find that I can really get probably pulled into things without. But as I say, sifunzwe na mama na babu, tufunzwa na ulimwengu. Hey, been funzwa every day. You learn a new thing. Let me tell you. And it's to me that's the thing. I don't know, that's so good and so bad about Nairobi is that it can be heaven and hell all in the same 5 minutes period. And you just can't believe the worst thing you can ever think of happening or being involved in can happen 2 minutes next to the best thing that's ever happened to you. And, I'm sure that's a global experience, but somehow here it seems to be, more often and more random. Anything can happen. Huwezi jua kile itatokea. Just go tayari. That's what I've learned.
So, hujapigwa character development bado na... I was hoping you could tell me, there's this day I went to... Like, for me, I've been conned a couple of times. Especially this guy from committee, they call, they tell you something, and the next thing you know, your M-Pesa money...
Suddenly it's gone. They've taken a Fuliza.
Yeah. So for me, that has happened, but... It's funny because once it's happening, you don't know. And then immediately it has happened. That's when it hits you. You know what? I've been conned. And maybe that's the beauty about Nairobi, or it's the worst side. But what you wanted to show us on the soup is everybody in Nairobi has been conned somehow or another. So you're not alone.
I think if you've grown up here, when Kanois say that we've been, maybe conned is a strong word, but misled by the series of governments that we've all happened to live under. We all hope for the best, but to me that's...
So far, how's the new regime?
The new regime is still new, although it's a year, and we're here where everyone they didn't know what was going to happen. I give them, I don't know, it's a hard one to really justify fully from my perspective because I just don't know. On one end, the speeches are very good. Some of the action is good. Some of the action is also bad. And like I was saying, you can have heaven and hell in the same time. I think the new regime is also in that same way. But, we're promised. It's the end of the dynasties. It's a new dawn for Kenya. So they better deliver. The reason we voted for UDA was they said this is a new time. And one of the things that I was very strongly excited about was they actually mentioned in his manifesto on page 28, there's a whole section about improving and reforming the charcoal trade. And they said one of the biggest problems with charcoal right now, 30% of the cost is bribes. So they know that's the biggest problem with it. And they've said they're going to make sure that now the producer associations come back, because when they made charcoal illegal, if everyone is eating nyama choma, it has to come from somewhere. So that only means that it's gone underground and it's becoming now magendu and corrupt. And why can't we grow charcoal the way that we grow tomatoes, the way that we grow wheat? If you want makas, upande miti. And then the guys who are doing it, they used to have producer associations. Even the charcoal maker himself was paying NHIF. If he got hurt on the foot, anaenda hospitali. Right now, that guy in the bush, if he gets hurt, what does he do? no hope, you know? And so one of the big excitements for me of the new administration was they actually brought that up and looked at it. Because for so long, most governments, most NGOs, they all talk about makani baya, alafu lunch ni kuku choma. And you're like, wait a minute, you're eating roast chicken on charcoal and you're saying that it's a bad thing. And we know it's livelihoods for so many people. The value chain, I think 1 million people in Kenya have jobs directly to the charcoal industry. And to not formalize that and let people do it in a correct, sustainable, non-corrupt manner is one of the most terrible legacies Kenya's had in the last 30, 40 years. Because if you think 80% of people in Kenya are using charcoal almost on a daily basis. And since independence, it's never fully been a sustainable value chain like any of the other industries. So I'm very optimistic that these guys follow through with their political promises. Walisema sasa waitende.
About them, Gachagua mentioned something that watafungua spaces kiasi za forest watu wapande miti ama wakate. And then recently tumekuwa na the African Climate Summit. I don't know, there's been a big talk around conservation. What do you think? Do you think it's being implemented from the day started talking? All these conferences from previous, comparing to the previous. Do we need to go the conference way or do we need to go the action way? Actually to go to ground and everything.
I mean, you do have to do both because with action without direction can be disastrous. What do they always say? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And again, with things like the Shamba system, the logging ban being lifted, all of those things, it's all about management. It works perfectly if you manage it. Like these sheep wool behind me. They're fine if the sun is raining. If it starts raining now and I don't put them inside, sisi taharibika.
True.
And I think the same thing goes for so many things. If you're going to do Shamba system, there is a good way to do it, involving community members, protecting the trees. People get food, win-win situation. Now, if it goes in a bad way, it will probably reduce the tree cover. And just like so many things, even back to the whole charcoal trade, all of the laws, for so many things in Kenya, the law exists, the law is there. We don't need a conference to change the law is there. We just need to implement the law. And let's see. No, that's a tuone.
So Teddy, you have, the last time I was here, you showed me your space of land. You're trying, right now you're trying something new with the environment, blending blending manure, charcoal and sand.
Yeah, the dust.
So far, how's the experiment going? Is it? I'm seeing the sukuma wikis are not.
Yeah, seeing the sukumas. Tumavuna sana. We've eaten maybe 5 times from those.
Are you satisfied to say it's working?
Yeah, I'm satisfied to say it's working. The thing is, like with any trials and anyone, if you have that scientific mind, test and test again. To me, half of the enjoyment is testing. There's so many variables. Did it have enough shade? Did it have enough sun? The ratios can be different types of plants, of course. So what we're doing next, actually, in that plot will be pasture, forage mix. So back to the thing with doing seed balls for grass, for livestock. There are different types of grasses and wildflowers for different ecoregions in Kenya. So even though Machakos is one county, the highland is different grass than the lowlands. So we've got a whole bunch of grasses that we're starting to do trials on now. Because, at the end of the day, my business is nyama choma. We sell jikos. So we need the wanyama, mifugo, iko monono, makai, patikane.
I've tested meat from your jiko. And the person we were testing it was saying, wow, this jiko is amazing. Because it was a small portion of charcoal.
Yeah, that's so good.
And then it could burn so hot, burn nyama choma. We even baked through the session. It was one of the amazing nyama chomas I've ever had.
Oh, fantastic. Well, you'll need to come for your own jiko soon.
Hizi zingine moshi imekuchapa pale hata usikii nyama imeharibika. So, funny enough, we wish to have a parting shot. Tell us the prices of seed balls. How can they get them? The prices of, or maybe where they can get the jikos, the seed balls, and any other services you're offering. I also know you are also capable of offering mentorship services, speeches, talks, on all these important occasions. So maybe tell us more of how we can be able to reach you on social media, on all those spaces.
Cool, yeah. So we're on all the kawaida social media now, even TikTok. Some young guy told me the other day, "Where mzee? Would you engage TikTok?" I was like, "But I'm 38. What do you mean mzee? What do you mean?" So you can find us on all of those. And then the seed balls are 500 shillings a kilo for wholesale, for the big bags. And then they're different for these little small ones. And you can get branded ones. Maybe you're having an album launch, a birthday party. You can send everyone home with a bag of seeds from that particular event, for guys to plant trees, remember that whole occasion.
Okay.
I'm very happy to talk with people for hours on end about anything to do with trees and charcoal and cooking and jikos.
Yeah.
And yeah, karibuni, 24/7 on WhatsApp. Just drop me a message, you have interest in anything. And also, I really want to hear from your listeners and the people you work with, because for us, so much of this journey is about learning from all of the people you've interacted with, from other people's experiences, like you were saying. You know, some people have had incredible successes and you just don't know because you've never asked them. Okay. And asking questions is a skill in life that everyone should cultivate as much as possible.
Okay. Thank you so much for welcoming us to your space. Today on the you guys, to go serious. So I say, welcome to the Soup Show again.
Sonny Hams.
Sonny Hams, and we're happy to be with him. Tell us more about yourself, man.
My name is Sonny Hams. Okay. I'm just passionate with the environment. I've been working with Seedballs Kenya 2 years now, counting. I'm an environmental coordinator in Seedballs Kenya. I'm the one who works with the deliveries, dispatch, getting feedback from the recipients, the progress of Seedballs, how is it performing, and all that. I'm also an ambassador of Seedballs, going out in events, Nini. If you have events, just call me. Okay. I'll show up with some Seedballs. Yes.
What's the most amazing thing about working at Seedballs?
Having a cool boss, of course.
Okay.
and also planting a lot of trees. I love planting trees. Okay. So with working with Seedballs, gives me a chance to plant a lot of trees daily. Wow. Yes. Yeah.
So far? How many years?
2 years. Yeah. I've planted so far almost 5,000 plus trees. Okay. Yes. And growing. You know, we don't plant trees, we grow trees. Okay. Yes.
So what's the most profound thing you've learned in the 2 years? The most profound thing you always go and wake up, say, this is why I'm waking up?
I just had to learn that I got that technique from Teddy to an efficient way to do reforestation, just planting many trees at a go. Okay. Yes, that's the most thing that I've learned since. So, and always grateful forever for it, yes.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Your parting shot to the guys.
Okay, cheers, guys. That's it.
Just cheers.
Yeah, and plant trees. And don't plant, just grow trees. Yeah.
So, wadau umesikia? Panda miti. Thank you, manzi.